Hey all, welcome to week 12. We are quickly approaching the end of this semester. So, this week, you are going to be reading Martin Luther King Jr.'s most famous composition, or at least one of them, called Letter from a Birmingham Jail. Now, as you're reading this letter, I want you to think about a few things. Primarily, think about Martin Luther King Jr. and how he has been spoken of and thought of in popular culture. So, oftentimes we see clips of Martin Luther King Jr., obviously tons of images, specifically from his very famous I Have a Dream speech. But when you're reading this letter, you might get a different sense of who Dr. King was and what his message was. And that's what I want you to think about. Juxtapose those two things. This idea of King that you're reading and the idea of King that we've kind of grown up with. Do they conflict? Do they blend well? Is this the exact person that you thought he was? That's what I want you to examine and to think about. It's really important to know that Dr. King was not a beloved figure during the Civil Rights Movement. In fact, throughout America, he was generally hated by a majority of the population. I think his approval rating, when I was reading about it recently, was something extremely low by the American populace, like 28%. So think about those things and how history has treated him, obviously well, but once again, juxtaposed to the time of the actual Civil Rights Movement. Okay, so you're going to be reading that, you'll be responding. Make sure you find me on Google Hangouts like many of you have been doing if you need assistance thinking through these things. You'll also be reading a little bit from Sherman Alexie, who's a Native American poet and author, called How to Write the Great American Novel. It's a short poem that you can read. But just normal discussion board posts, another little video from Martin Luther King Jr. in an NBC interview. It's really, really good and really, really short. Think about how this video in particular would be received today if MLK was to actually give that same interview. Okay, for discussion board number 10, y'all pretty much know the drill now. Here's your template. So in Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail, he argues that race in America is what? What's his particular idea about race in America and why? Because blank. He forms the basis of his point through blank. So what is undergirding his argument? And find me the best quote that he gives throughout the entire letter and give it to me. He also brings up blank. So make sure that you're thinking through the most persuasive ideas that King communicates. In some, these lines from King articulate his powerful conviction that blank by blank. In my own opinion of his argument, I acknowledge that King's experience of blank and blank undergird his sense of blank. And or but, I think our sense of race in America is shaped by, and a lot of you here, historically, when you get to this point, you say, race in America is shaped by experiences. It's like, well, yeah, but be more specific. What kind of experiences? And be more specific than racist experiences. Yes, of course. Can you be specific here? Can you spice it up? Give me an actual image in my mind that I can think of. That can really go a long way in making your writing more persuasive. I can primarily see this in my experiences through what? Can you give me a specific story, a specific image, something that you remember from childhood or adulthood or whatever? Give me an image in my mind. This helps me to understand that race and racism as it functions in America is blank because blank. And y'all have done a great job expanding on this, and don't be afraid to delve into it. Right? Expand on your ideas. Give me specific examples. Be okay with taking risks, right? We're in a college classroom. That means that we're going to be able to take risk, think critically. If we say something wrong, we can be corrected and move on. It's not a big deal. Okay? All right. So make sure that everything is ready to rock and roll. The initial discussion board post and 2 comments by 11:59 p.m. on Sunday, and I will chime in with a video on Thursday.